Hello, I'm Francis Lawrence. I'm the director of The Hunger Games Catching Fire, Mockingjay 1, Mockingjay 2, and also The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds Snakes.
Hollywood royalty has just crossed a line no one saw coming. Steven Spielberg and Francis Lawrence, two of the most influential and commanding directors in the business, didn't merely distance themselves from Rachel Zegler. They openly and fiercely called her out. And allegedly, they did so with the calculated intention of derailing the young actress's rising career. This wasn't a subtle behind-the-scenes murmur or an off-the-record jab. This appeared to be a deliberate, orchestrated move that had been brewing for years. Whispers had long circulated about Zegler's behavior, accusations of her being difficult to work with, entitled and dismissive toward the very icons who laid the groundwork for her success. But now, Spielberg and Lawrence are no longer staying silent. They're making themselves heard, loud and clear.
This woman is extraordinarily woke, as everyone is in Hollywood, but she's woke in a way that's quite direct.
They're reportedly exposing everything, from chaotic moments on set to over-the-top demands, and an ego so massive it disrupted entire productions. And the most shocking part, they're not leaking this through gossip magazines. They're allegedly using the industry's most powerful channels: studio executives, top casting agents, and major showrunners. From the very beginning, Spielberg is said to have branded her a set killer, while Lawrence has allegedly described her as a director's worst nightmare. Now, the term blacklisted isn't just wild fan speculation, it's becoming the go-to buzzword when her name is mentioned in industry circles. To make matters worse, insiders are now leaking phone records and call logs.
Well, like me, who watched Disney princess movies when the world was okay and it was acceptable for us to dream about being a princess as a woman and meeting a handsome prince. But oh no, these big bad feminists now are telling us that's ridiculous. How dare you want to meet a handsome prince?
Internal crew memos, frantic late-night texts from anxious producers scrambling for solutions. The message couldn't have been clearer. Rachel wasn't merely difficult, she was a full-blown disaster. And now, Hollywood is having a field day with the aftermath. Get ready, because what you're about to uncover is the behind-the-scenes story of how one rising actress allegedly managed to torch every professional relationship in Tinseltown, with two legendary directors striking the first spark. And it all began on day one.
And be swept off of your feet and live happily ever after. No, you should want to be the prince. You should want to go out and fight the bad guys with a sword. And I'm like, I don't really want to do that.
Steven Spielberg, a director who's collaborated with legends like Tom Hanks and Meryl Streep, sensed something was wrong almost immediately. Rachel Zegler wasn't just inexperienced. She came across as overconfident, resistant to guidance, and shockingly disrespectful. Behavior the crew claimed hadn't been witnessed on set in decades. She reportedly challenged blocking directions during live scenes, pushed back on camera placements, and debated line readings, even when the lines were from classic scripts that had stood the test of time. Crew members say she frequently rolled, her eyes at lighting technicians trying to adjust her position, and allegedly refused to participate in reshoots unless her so-called creative vision was fully respected. And Spielberg? He's been in this business long enough to have seen it all, but this, even for him, was something different.
I just mean that it's no longer 1937, and we absolutely wrote a Snow White that
she's not going to be saved by the prince.
She's not going to be saved by the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be.
Spielberg has worked with his fair share of true divas, but according to insiders, what truly infuriated him was Rachel's complete absence of humility. She was gifted the role of Maria on a silver platter, a dream part that countless actresses would have given anything to play. Yet, those close to the production claim she behaved as if she were doing Spielberg a favor just by showing up. And Spielberg? He stayed composed, observed quietly, and kept his thoughts to himself. But when awards season hit and Zegler's ego reportedly skyrocketed to unmanageable heights, that composure cracked. Sources say he picked up the phone, made 2 swift calls to top studio executives, and delivered a firm message: never again.
And the leader that her late father told her that she could be if she was fearless, fair, brave, and true. And so it's just a really incredible story for, I think, young people everywhere to see themselves in.
Snow White is running for president.
I'm launching my campaign.
And when Steven freaking Spielberg speaks, the entire industry pays attention. But Rachel didn't back down. In an interview with Allure, she took a not-so-subtle jab at veteran filmmakers, criticizing old-school directors who can't handle a strong woman. Everyone in Hollywood caught the implication. She was clearly referring to Spielberg, and that was it. That was the moment she crossed a line no up-and-coming actress should ever dare to cross. She didn't just lose Spielberg's support, she turned him into an adversary. According to Page 6, shortly after that quote made waves online, casting executives began labeling her as high risk. Directors started walking away from projects involving her, and scheduled meetings were abruptly canceled.
Have they ever thought about maybe like a little bit of like, I don't know, vulnerability study, opposition research, that sort of thing before you go and hire some Zoomer who's a lunatic?
Hardcore.
They're petrified of some kind of back.
Hollywood royalty just did the unthinkable. Steven Spielberg and Francis Lawrence, two of the most powerful, untouchable directors in the industry, didn't just quietly cut ties with Rachel Zegler. They allegedly exposed her, publicly, brutally, and, insiders say, with the full intention of ending the career of one of Hollywood's fastest rising stars. This wasn't hearsay or cryptic gossip floating through studio hallways. It was calculated, deliberate, and years in the making. For a long time, the whispers were there. Zegler had a reputation for being difficult, entitled, and dismissive toward the icons who built the very stage she walked on. But now, Spielberg and Lawrence aren't whispering anymore. They're reportedly laying it all out. The chaotic sets, the diva antics, the unchecked ego that consumed entire productions. And here's the kicker. They're not leaking to tabloids. They're allegedly moving through backdoor channels, and the ones that matter, studio heads, casting execs, top-tier producers. Spielberg is said to have called her a set killer. Lawrence, a director's worst nightmare. And suddenly, what fans once brushed off as conspiracy theories turned into an industry consensus. Blacklisted isn't a Twitter hashtag anymore. It's a real label now attached to her name. Sources are leaking call records, internal, crew emails, and frantic texts from producers at their breaking point. The message was loud and clear. Rachel Zegler wasn't a challenge. She was a disaster. And now, Hollywood is feeding on the fallout. Strap in, because this is the raw, behind-the-scenes story of how one actress allegedly burned every bridge she walked across, and how two Hollywood titans decided to strike the first match. It started on day one. Spielberg, a man who's directed giants like Tom Hanks and Meryl Streep, knew instantly something was off. Rachel wasn't just inexperienced, she was cocky, unteachable, and brazenly disrespectful, according to crew members, who say they hadn't seen behavior like hers in decades. She reportedly questioned blocking instructions mid-take, pushed back on camera setups, and insisted on rewriting classic lines she claimed she could improve. Eye rolls at lighting techs became routine, and she allegedly refused retakes, unless her creative input was fully honored. Spielberg, who's seen more egos than the Oscars' red carpet, stayed silent. At first, he's worked with true prima donnas, but what sources say truly enraged him was her total lack of humility. Rachel Zegler was handed the role of Maria, a part most actresses dream of, without lifting a finger. And yet, according to whispers from set insiders, she acted like she was doing Spielberg a favor by even showing up. Still, Spielberg kept calm. He took notes. He didn't react publicly. But when award season hit and Rachel's ego reportedly exploded to unbearable proportions, Spielberg finally snapped. Insiders claim he made 2 swift calls to major studio heads with a clear final message: never again. And when Steven freaking Spielberg says that, you don't ask questions, you listen. But Rachel didn't retreat. In an Allure interview, she threw shade at old-school directors who can't handle a strong woman. The entire industry caught the subtext. It was aimed squarely at Spielberg. That was the moment she crossed the line no new star should ever even approach. She didn't just lose Spielberg's support, she made him her adversary. Page 6 later reported that casting executives began flagging her as high risk. Directors began pulling out of projects, and meeting calendars emptied overnight. All because one man, the man, was done staying silent. Let's be honest, if the creator of E.T., Jurassic Park, and Saving Private Ryan thinks you're radioactive, your career isn't in trouble. It's buried. There was no tweet storm, no lawsuit, no TMZ meltdown, just silence. And in Hollywood, that kind of silence is deafening. Spielberg didn't go public. He didn't have to. Sources say he simply began doing what matters most in this business. He stopped saying yes, and when Spielberg stops picking up the phone, the rest of Hollywood follows suit. Suddenly, Rachel's phone stopped ringing. Projects she was attached to stalled. Her team scrambled, pitching her to roles she once would have been courted for. Crickets. YouTube gossip channels started connecting the dots. Zegler wasn't taking a break. She was being frozen out. Channel after channel began calling it what it was: blacklisted. Bounding into comics resurfaced a quote where she tried to reframe the narrative, saying, "I have to be fearless and loud." It was meant to be empowering, but the internet didn't buy it. TikTok comment sections lit her up for playing the victim. Twitter dragged her as out of touch. And Hollywood execs, they just rolled their eyes and closed their wallets. Because, in this business, reputation is currency, and hers was bankrupt. Supporters tried to spin the narrative: sexism, racism, miscommunication. But none of that can mask the simple, brutal truth. When every casting director ghosts your agent, your career is over. And this wasn't just Spielberg being vindictive. It was an entire industry reading the room. And the room was screaming, Rachel Zegler is a liability. Fast forward to 2023, Poland. The cold, gray filming location location for the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes felt all too fitting. Francis Lawrence, returning to helm the Hunger Games prequel, hoped to revive a billion-dollar franchise. Instead, he walked into a Spielberg-style meltdown. From the jump, insiders say Zegler acted like the franchise revolved around her. Crew members say she treated staff like assistants, demanded last-minute script changes, and even walked off set because a camera angle wasn't feminine enough. One insider claimed she rejected a signature Lucy Gray dress because it didn't reflect modern femininity. And that was just the beginning. Production assistants took to Reddit, calling the set toxic. One even described it as walking into a daily war zone. Zegler allegedly rewrote lines mid-scene, forcing entire camera teams to recalibrate. Shoot days stretched from 10 hours to 16 because Rachel insisted on debating the emotional nuance of fictional lyrics. Yes, song lyrics. Veteran crew, people who had worked on Mockingjay and Catching Fire, reportedly dubbed the experience The Zone, now used like a ghost story warning on indie film sets. But the true low point, the performance itself. Evie magazine torched her portrayal of Lucy Gray Baird, calling it smug, shallow, and horribly miscast. Critics agreed. Fans rejected her instantly, calling her performance soulless, robotic, and painfully self-aware. And the most devastating critique came from within. Francis Lawrence himself allegedly told Lionsgate execs, "I'll never babysit that attitude again. Let that sink in." The same director who launched Jennifer Lawrence into superstardom was finished after one film with Zegler. That's not a bad review. That's a career death sentence. When someone like Francis Lawrence calls you a nightmare, that echo doesn't fade. It reverberates through every major studio lot. In late 2024, after finishing post-production, Lawrence didn't throw a rap party. He made a phone call, not to PR, not to marketing, but to someone who had already survived the storm, Steven Spielberg. Sources say the conversation lasted only minutes, but what was shared allegedly ignited one of the most damning leaks in recent memory. A grip with speakerphone access fed the whole exchange to a mid-tier YouTube channel, and it went viral. Two of Hollywood's most respected voices, one actress, one shared war story. Spielberg reportedly said, "She weaponizes her image but has no respect for the craft." Lawrence replied, "She walks in like she owns the franchise, like we should thank her." But this wasn't just venting, it was strategy. They promised to warn others, producers, agents, showrunners. Protect your crews from the Zegler Effect. That phrase stuck. And when Hollywood hears words like that from men like them, it listens. Suddenly, red flags surrounded her name. Warner Brothers, Universal, even Paramount reportedly backed out of a streaming project when Spielberg's assistant quietly advised, "Not advisable." Her momentum didn't just slow, it crashed. Her representation panicked. One insider claimed her manager sent a mass email offering Rachel for indie projects at a massive discount, no takers. Because when the directors who built modern Hollywood say don't hire her, you don't need a second opinion. Hollywood lives for redemption arcs, but it thrives on takedowns. And this takedown? Spielberg and Lawrence made it gospel. Rachel wasn't just controversial, she was officially toxic. Then came the bombshell. Snow White, March 2025. Budget, $350 million. Domestic opening, a humiliating $43 million vanity. Fair insiders blamed Zegler's nonstop PR disasters. Disney axed the red carpet, killed junkets, too afraid she'd slam the original film again or toss another political grenade. The collapse of the film killed her last bargaining chip. Facebook Reels even claimed Disney placed a "do not hire" tag next to her name. Insiders say Spielberg and Lawrence met over lunch last week. It wasn't revenge, it was reflection. They compared notes on broken schedules, drained morale, wrecked budgets, everything Rachel allegedly destroyed. They left agreeing on one thing: if the studios won't protect the crews, we will. That message spread like wildfire. Agencies backed off, casting got tighter, and Rachel? She fired off a cryptic tweet: "Silence is violence." It disappeared 10 minutes later, but the screenshots didn't. Spielberg and Lawrence didn't need a headline. They didn't need a public takedown. Their quiet warning? It roared like thunder through the town.